Greetings everybody, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage here. I wanted to make a quick little video for you all today about something that I commonly experience when I'm out looking for sewing machines. And this is sort of an amalgam of different videos I've made before, but I wanted to introduce you to one of my latest finds, and it represents something that many of you may come across when you're looking for older machines. And my groaning is not fake there, guys. That is a very heavy machine. Some of you who are familiar with vintage models will recognize this as the legendary Singer 201. Now, it's not looking very legendary at the moment, and many of you will come across machines that look like this. I literally have gotten this machine, and in order to transport it home, I removed it out of its table. And I'll be doing a video on, as part of my table series, how do you move sewing machines carefully so that you don't damage either your table or your machine. But today I wanted to kind of talk to you about, diamonds in the rough. A lot of people will look at this and they'll think, oh, this is not worth buying. This is a mess. Because, and if I zoom in, you'll see, you can imagine why somebody might think that. So, when you look inside here, inside the stitch lever, it's very dark, there's dust, there's grime, and there are actual cobwebs on this machine. As you can tell, it's been sitting for quite a while. This one was in a garage. This is one of the worst places that people can put a sewing machine. But the alternative was they might have gotten rid of it or even tossed it in the trash. As awful and ridiculous as that sounds, this sometimes happens. When I look over here, I see, I'll tilt this toward you, you can see a little bit better. It may not come up on the camera here, but on the bobbin and needle plate, there are little pits, little areas of oxidation because of exposure to moisture. It's not heavily rusted, and the plate still, moves beautifully. Let's pan back out so you can see what I'm doing. Whenever I move the hand wheel, and I just am very gentle, I do get needle bar movement, and that's a good sign. Singers can be found when they're all frozen up and locked up, but that's more unusual for the Singer straight stitch models. Now the zigzaggers are a whole different matter. One of the other things I'm looking at here, I see these little spots. I have no idea what this is. This may be oxidation. It may be a little bit of, I don't know what it is. It's a discoloration, and I'll have to get into it further. Now, I'm not going to take a stiff brush to this because I don't want the dust to cause damage. For example, here, I'm just put this cotton swab here, and you can see I can get the dust off, but first thing I'll do is I'll be using maybe some canned air here to get the loose stuff, and then I'm going to use sewing machine oil, and I may even put a little sewing machine oil in a little sprayer, because dust, it may not sound like it, dust looks very soft and fluffy, but it's full of fibers that can actually cut and scratch. It'll put little micro scratches on the paint of your sewing machine. And remember that these machines were painted with black, some people call it Japanning, but it was a black lacquer paint that was then heat cured, and then they installed their decals, of course, and then they would go back with a clear top coat of lacquer. Now, I have no idea what the tension assembly looks like. When I bought this machine, I could tell that it did in fact have its check spring, but that check spring feels really, really stiff. I'm going to have to check it and make sure it's in the right spot. It might be. Still has a needle in it. I don't see any thread guides missing. Let's see. We've got the cord, and you can see that the cord still has, you can see some of the dry rotting on the cord. This cord will need to be replaced, but that's not unusual. Not always, but very often I do need to replace the cords. And let's see, I'm going to move the machine around a little bit for you. And you can see the hand wheel here. And I see this was, of course, a nickel-plated hand wheel. I believe it was nickel-plated, maybe chrome. Anyway, part of that's gone. That doesn't bother me. I can buff that out, and I'll probably leave it. I doubt I could replace it with another one. But things like this don't bother me. One of my viewers, by the way, thank you to the viewer who said, hey, you should start thinking about maybe using the word conservation instead of restoration, because I don't believe in stripping machines down and repainting them per se. And again, I'll tilt down. I want you guys to see. I'm going to zoom in and you can see just how filthy this area is. Now, some of you who are new to vintage machines, this might bother you. You might see all this dust and grime and think, oh, what a mess. There's cobwebs, there's lots of dust here in the motor area. You can see me pulling it off here. But dust and dirt on the outside don't mean that the machine is broken. It just means it's been stored in less than an optimal spot. Now I was showing you guys the cord earlier, and I can see, ouch, just got stuck by one of the pins in that makeshift pin cushion the prior owner had there. So let's zoom in here, guys, and I'll show you something else that you might see. Of course, what you're seeing is this is the outer jacket of the cord, and then there are two wires in the cord, and the wires have their own little insulation piece, and it's broken here and it's loose. It would never occur to me. This machine has a foot pedal. It came with one, and these are the connections that went to it. I believe it had the foot pedal. In any case, I'm going to use a new wire for this. I'm not going to use this. It is strange to me what some people are willing to do, but all of this is going to need to come out and be inspected. But that said, the machine again may be able to run. Now I look below. I have not plugged this in, but let's tilt this up. I want you to see where my hands are. So there's a switch here and a light. The switch seems to still work. I really have to clean these wires gently so I can get a look at them. I can't actually tell if a cord or a wire is dry rotted until I can actually see it. And this one's got so much filth on it. But don't let the filth scare you. I know that this machine has some loss in its. I can see that the presser foot was up. By the way, if you ever have a machine and you're not using it, let the foot rest. You can put a little piece of, doesn't have to be this big, you can put a piece of fabric under the foot where it touches your feed dogs and let the foot rest downward. Make sure that your take-up lever for your presser foot is down, because that spring would like to rest. You don't want the spring to have to work, weeks and days when you're not using the machine. But yes, you will see what I can see here. I'm going to zoom in here. We'll show all the warts and the wear here. What I'm seeing here is something I don't see very often, but it looks like some moisture may have touched this presser bar. And when I take my Q-tip or my little cotton swab, I think what I'm getting is a combination of dust, old oil, and rust. And that's something that's tricky. You might look at the machine and say, oh God, that thing has rust in it. Sometimes what you're seeing is brown, very old, gummed up oil, or it could be rust. Now the old oils that people would when you see a lot of old brown oil, it's not always a bad thing, because yes, your needle and your presser bar might not be shiny and beautiful, but sometimes the old oil had a way of protecting those metal parts and either preventing rust or certainly slowing it down. So let's see, we'll turn this, maybe I can show you what I mean by the browned oil. So here's an example, everyone. I've zoomed in very close on the side plate. You're getting a very, very, very up close look. And what I see here is mostly dust, soil, some old oil, but I believe with some of the metal polish I have shown in one of my other videos on restoring the metal hardware on a machine, I believe that's going to polish up really beautifully. And let's see, what else have we got here? I have no idea what I'm looking at below. Just mostly, let's see here. Right here, it looks like I see dust, I see brown, I see old oil, some strange combination of all of the above. And what else to tell you? Like I say, you want to check, make sure your check spring is working, make sure you get movement in both of the two bars. If anything gives resistance to you, if you pull up on your pressure bar and it's really stiff and it doesn't want to move, and the same thing goes for your needle bar. Remember, as I've mentioned to you all before, even with the front dials, there is no need to force these or try to strong arm them, because you can damage your machine and it's unnecessary. It should be possible to unlock them, but you want to take time and be gentle. These things have sometimes been sitting. I know from the prior owner, this machine has sat for 40 years. It has not sewn a stitch in 40 years. That's around 1980 or so. Given that, we know that old machines can certainly be brought back, but it might be useful to help the machine out by being a little careful and exercising some care there, right? Now, if I pull this, I have some movement here on this stitch length adjuster. Now this is the set screw that locks in your stitch length, which I should demonstrate in another video sometime. Most people don't use this because they get plenty of stability in their stitch length lever. When you're sewing with heavy fabrics, you will sometimes want to lock that in, because heavy fabrics have a way of throwing off your stitch length if you're not adjusting it and locking it in. I mainly wanted to mention this because of the set screw. If the set screw is stiff, don't force it either. That's when we're going to use a penetrant oil to let it soak. Give it a chance to melt down some of that old oil, because old oil and grease, they can gum up when they get extremely old and they act like a glue, and that can make your life difficult. When I come over here to this is of course the set screw to my needle clamp, and it moves. It's a little slow, but it's moving. But that's all I really wanted to do. Now, I suspect underneath this little, what looks like a bandage, many of you will see this, people had a habit of, ergonomically wanting to put pins in different places. Many people did not have, of course, when this machine was made, there were no home sergers. And so you had to finish the seams, the raw edges of your fabric. And when you were doing this, there were different techniques for it. Unless you were going to use a rolled hem foot, you needed pins, and people would often pin fabric to keep it in place as they were sewing it in. And you will see very often little pieces of fabric that are wound around the machine to hold pins. A couple of the machines I've seen from the 60s had built-in pin cushions. I think I had a Morse machine way back, one of my older videos. You guys should check it out. I don't even know if I highlighted it in that video, but it had a built-in pin cushion on top. I guess they must have studied all the people that had been sticking pins on the body of their machine. Why Singer never listened to their customers, I don't know. And you can see, if I zoom in here, you'll see where some of this, where they've been putting pins in, it's a little scuffed here over the S in Singer. And I wouldn't be surprised when this comes off. I will take this off because I don't want the pins in here I just don't want me or my my customer to get stuck with them. But when this comes off, it's very possible you'll see some nicks and some scuffing, even some scratches in the paint. But that's okay. I'm not going to repaint it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that as one of the hallmarks or wear marks of a machine, right? It's part of its history. It doesn't affect the function. And again, I am again, to borrow the phrase from one of my viewers, I'm a conservator. I'm not going to strip it down and repaint it and all that. That's not really what I like to do. Now, again, another thing you may see, let's say you saw this machine and you're thinking, I wonder if we should buy this or not. Well, the owner said that she knew it had run, but not in 40 years. One of the things you'll notice is very common is that sewing machines, whenever they were lifted up and folded back into the table, because a lot of people tried to hide their machines. Now, when I have a machine that's mine that I'm using, I leave it out. I want it. I love the aesthetic of sewing machines, and a lot of my friends and guests are fascinated by them because they're not used to seeing them. So they're kind of a novelty. But back when these machines were new, people wanted them hidden into the tables that, as I have explained, they spent a fortune on. And so sometimes you'll see little nicks in the paint that along the edges here. Remarkably, and I'm not going to strip a lot of this dust off because again, I want to be gentle, I don't want to grind that dust into the finish. But one of the things I'm noticing is the decals are intact. They appear to be intact here. And that's surprising because I'll know when I get all the dust off what it looks like. Your machine that you get may surprise you. Here's a little place of paint loss. I'm going to do a video on painting machines because I have a Necky that's you're going to see me do something you rarely see me do, which is to do some paint repair or conservation, some touch-up. I don't do it often, but I will show you how to do it and the products that I find to be very useful. And there may be times when it's called for, and that's really up to your own judgment. There is no hard and fast rule. But again, if you see this in a yard sale, so let's say you see a machine like this, okay? If I see a 201, I don't even care, even if it's like this, even if it had no table, no motor, no foot pedal, I would grab it because 201s, and again, this one has the rear mounted motor. As you all know, they're one of my favorite machines. I consider them one of the finest ever made, and I mean that statement boldly, as boldly as it sounds. Now, I'm looking at the belt over here. I should turn the machine back around for you. The belt is interesting. By the way, there's no bulb in this light fixture, but that doesn't bother me either because I can get light bulbs. In fact, most of you can get them at a sewing vacuum center or even a sewing shop will have light bulbs for some of these old machines. And if not, you can order them and they're super cheap. I'm like $3. Now, I'm looking at the belt. Now, these belts, sewing machine belts last a long time depending on where they're stored. And as boy, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to have you guys kind of watch me as I'm sort of inspecting the belt here. Now, this is easier to do with the belt off, and I will be doing it, but I'm just pushing on it. I don't see any cracks in it. I have to assume that this belt has been here a long time. And I believe that this machine, and the table it came in, which can be seen, I believe, right over here. It's actually sitting over here. It's covered in more sewing machine stuff. And again, I think the table has had a rough life, but I believe that it spent part of its life indoors, and that the reason the machine is so dusty and filthy is that this is when it started getting put into the garage. You know, they were gradually trying to say goodbye to it, I suppose. And of course, I need to inspect the motor. The motor, I have no idea what's going on with it. If the motor has issues, you know, I don't know at this point. But I can get other BT motors, BR motors for this. This is a motor that Singer used for generations. And there are tons of them out there. I can also replace it with a new motor as well if I choose. I can also treadle it because this 201, unlike the 201s with the potted motors, these 201s have grooves in their hand wheels. So I'm actually surprised I'm not seeing more hairline cracks or signs of dry rotting in this belt. But, you know, overall, I think this machine actually looks a lot worse than it is. But again, I won't know until I start tearing it apart and giving a good look at it. Let's see, one other view. We'll get one other look at this machine underneath. And make sure I'm not crushing my motor here. I want to be gentle with it. Let's take a look, guys, underneath the machine. And this drivetrain is truly one of the things that makes the 201 so special. I'm not seeing much oxidation down here. I see a lot of dust. I see cobwebs. Here are the grease cups. They're in place. I suspect the feed dog drop mechanism is probably stiff. I'm not even going to try to turn this set screw as how you adjust that. And this is a feature that seldom got used on many machines. So I'm very unsurprised that this is stiff, but I can loosen that with some penetrant oil, and then I will clean and lubricate it. But nothing looks amiss down here. The dirt and cobwebs do not scare me. I've seen much dirtier machines. But again, When you're looking at any vintage sewing machine, decide, is it something you are going to have for yourself? Or is it something you want to tinker on because you want to learn how to restore or refurbish machines? Are you doing it for someone else? Or are you just curious and want to take a look at it? You know, you may get this, you may see this in a yard sale, and somebody may say, yeah, I'll take 10, 15 bucks. People have been known just to give them away to get rid of them, to get them out of their way. That's not very common, but it has happened. And then there are people who will have a machine that's just like this. I met someone who had a 201, and you know, I asked them would they consider taking less, and they said no, we probably are going to ask for more, which they wanted a very astounding price for their machine, and you know, it hadn't been touched in who knows how many years. And so when I see machines, I start to calculate how many hours, it's just a guess, but how many hours am I going to be giving to this device, and how many do I want to give? Obviously, and you've all heard me say this, I typically spend anywhere from 15 to 25 hours. I'd say on average about 20 hours on a 201 because they take me longer to restore. They are not any more prone to needing restoration. It's just all the different areas of the machine take a little more time. I obviously think they're worth it, and even though this machine doesn't look anything like some of the others I've come across, some of them were a lot cleaner. The one that you saw in my video in that mahogany table, which has now been sold. It now has a new home. That machine was a joy to work on because it had been used. It had been used, you know, within the last 5 years. This one has been sitting for 40. But the machines are so incredible that I'm willing to give this what will probably take a good 20 hours to really do it justice, do it right. And as I've told customers before who've asked me if we can kind of do a half restoration, I always say no. If we're going to do this, let's do it correctly. And if you're going to have a machine, not just to look at as a prop, but you actually want to sew with it, and all of my clients do, it's an old machine and it needs to be gone through, and it was designed to be gone through. It was engineered to have a service life, not just a working life. So there you have it, guys. A diamond in the rough. I got, chunks of dust and who knows. Like I said, this machine's been held on to, and I'm very grateful to the people who sold me this machine because they didn't have to keep it. They could have thrown it in a recycling bin, God forbid. But they held on to it as long as they could, and then they said, we just can't keep it anymore. And, they did the best they could. Would I put this in a garage? Oh, heck no. I would keep this in climate control comfort. Machines like the same temperature ranges that people do. But I love 201 so much, I'm willing to rescue even one that looks as sad and pitiful as this one does, although I'm sure some of you may have seen worse. So anyway, this was just a video to mention to you all, don't let dust and dirt scare you. That doesn't mean that the machine is broken. It's just been asleep, and probably asleep in who knows where, some odd place for a while. But stay tuned, guys. I'll be doing, I'll be going through this machine to get it ready. I have a number of customers who love 201s who keep asking me about them, and I am doing my best to show people the white rotary because it makes a stitch just as beautiful as the 201s. You all know how I feel sorry for those rotaries because people just don't give them the same love, and it's a shame because I really think if you have any machine that makes a rotary stitch, you have something really special, and it doesn't have to be a Singer. But even though I'm singing the praises of the white rotary, and like I say, you can get them restored. I sell them for about $100 less than I sell a 201, and I believe they are the equal in quality. I certainly don't pass by a 201 when I can get a chance to rescue it and put it in my queue line for restoration. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Let's see, there should be another video coming up tomorrow, and then I'll be looking to sort of update my list of videos I would like to make. If any of you have ideas, some of you have shared them with me already, for videos you would like to see, or you can also remind me of videos that I have probably promised online and forgotten. Don't be shy, put it in the comments below, and I would sure appreciate it. Take care, everybody.